pain. I'm built for it. My buddy Ryan Russillo, he's got a great podcast at The Ringer, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. God, well, Russillo and I used to hang out, but apparently I'm a physical liability now. You gotta have a doctor on dial when you go out with me, Russillo. So how are things in your life? How are you doing?
I'm good. I was telling you, if you're going to dip your toes into the PEDs, you just had to, because I know you're trying to keep this appearance up, so I'm worried about you, big guy.
I'm doing okay. So it's funny. I take a week off with Russell Wilson, and suddenly he's Mr. Controversy. And my gut feeling on this, Ryan, is when guys who don't talk suddenly talk, there's something, right? Like, this is not just an off-season story. I just saw a story by Florio today. That's like the 5th story I've seen in 3 days. Somebody's talking in his camp, right?
Okay, so if we back up a few years, I remember back when we were working together all the time and we would talk about different guys. Like, I think Russell Wilson's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. I argue for his cause all the time, but he's arguably the single worst interview in sports today. All right. And if you go back and look at any time he's ever done anything, he is in a rush to go off the checklist of, man, that O-line, and man, the running backs are terrific, and DK, these guys, and Tyler, they're making plays, and the coaching staff got us ready. And it's like this like repetitive spoken word deal where you're like, okay, we got it. You want to seem like you're the guy checking off all the boxes so that you're giving everybody else a compliment. And that's his routine, and that's the way he wants to present himself. I find it very scripted and honestly incredibly boring, but that tells me that him leaking or leaning towards anything where there's maybe maybe I'm not going to be here, or maybe I am available in trade, is so much more for him than it would be anyone else. So I don't know if he's ever going to leave, but I thought that was a tactful commentary by him because he's never done anything like that before.
Yeah. So there's a couple of, it's the NBA has always been the transactional league. I would argue the playoffs are my favorite thing. The transactions are my second favorite thing. And regular season, I was often third. And I don't feel that with football because I still love the television product. But it is becoming more of a transactional league. And we've already seen Stafford and Goff, and we got Deshaun coming up. The J.J. Watt is interesting to me. I think we would both agree Wisconsin, Green Bay kind of feels like a fit. There's a story out today in Cleveland. So, by the way, J.J. loves these stories out because he's an aging player. He's expensive. Is there a fit for JJ that works? Is there a rumor you buy, a rumor you don't? What is your gut feeling going forward next 2 or 3 years with JJ Watt?
I'd imagine he wants to go somewhere where he has a chance to win above anything else. The Green Bay thing, I think we can make it a little bit more complicated than he went to Wisconsin. So, of course, he's going to want to be a Packer. I think, as far as like looking at cap sheets and all that kind of stuff, you can figure out a transaction, especially for somebody at JJ at this point of his career. I thought he played well last year. I really did.
Yeah, he did.
I feel like he was so dominant for so many years, and we know what happens with any player. When you don't look like that version of yourself, you're only being compared to yourself. I thought he was a terrific player last year. Maybe terrific's a little high, but I felt like he was actually impacting the pocket and a guy that you would want on your team. And considering, look, people can make fun of him, but we at least know he cares and he wants to win. And I can't imagine that he's going to go to any of these rumors where it's a team that doesn't have a really good chance of coming out of their conference. I don't buy it.
Yeah. So let me throw we know Carson Wentz is leaving Philadelphia. You're the G. You and I do this if we have beers. That it's fun. If we weren't doing what we were doing, I think we'd love to run teams. I would love to be a GM someday.
I'd love to trade with you.
Yes.
I'd love to be the GM. Be like, hey.
Russillo.
This guy would be great. The Rust Belt culture.
So Wentz is interesting. Because there's a lot of psychology here. Chicago would have to get rid of Nick Foles. Just get him out of town before he shows up with a U-Haul van. The Colts obviously feel right. But you would have to, as a general manager, you would have to buy Ryan. You can correct him because it ain't right now. It's not good. Are you a buyer for second chance Carson Wentz today if you ran a team?
I am. And I'll tell you why. It was ugly. It was ugly this year. But going back 2 years ago to carry those numbers over, he was throwing to guys that were playing quarterback in college, street free agents, and you still felt like they had a bit of a chance. So I don't know what happened this past year. I don't know if he's the bad guy. Maybe they're all the bad guy. I don't know who's complicit in this entire story. But I do know this. If you've talked to anyone that has run a team or coached an NFL team, and if they don't have a solution at quarterback, there's so much more value in a guy that's had the good runs like Carson Wentz has had. And the other thing I think we've all learned about Wentz, like when you have Dilfer on or I have him on or any of these guys that ever play that position, they are so enamored with Wentz's physical abilities that maybe sometimes it overshadowed some of the decision-making because they'd always be like, that throw right there, nobody else can make that throw. Carson Wentz is the only guy. And you'd be like, really? He's the only guy? They're like, all right, maybe 3 guys. But those are those throws. So that's why so many former players love this guy so much. But the former GMs and coaches, whenever they're looking at their checklist of guys that they can find that are out there, the fact that he even has a 2017 on his resume makes him more appealing. And so I think the social media aspect of this, the news part of it, Colin, all the talk shows, they're so anti-Wentz that I feel like I'm a buyer just going in the opposite direction of people acting like he's incapable of ever doing the job again. And that seems pretty extreme.
Yeah. Deshaun Watson's interesting. We all know he's good. Listen, Houston says they don't want to move off him. I think the Carolina stuff makes sense. You could give them Bridgewater, McCaffrey, 3 or 4 first-round picks. You know, you're never going to get equal value, but I do think Carolina's got some receivers. I like Matt Rule. I think Deshaun in that division. Breeze is leaving, Brady's old, and Matt Ryan's past his peak. The Carolina stuff feels kind of right. Is there a move for Deshaun that works for you?
He'd have to, he's got to be in a situation where he likes the coach for like the first time ever in his career because it never happened with Bill O'Brien. This stuff had been going on for a while. And now he's even in a worse situation where, I think it's kind of interesting how this has played out where it's like, oh, Brett Favre and Dick Vermeil said this. Almost everybody else is on Deshaun Watson's side. Colin, like literally everybody is in support of him because have you seen anyone in the media being like, hey, take it easy on the Texans? Like, nobody's on their side. So, we found like the 2 guys, one guy that's old school and another guy that's even older school. And Favre, who's a bit of a hypocrite considering how he held the Packers hostage when he retired 4 straight years. So for Deshaun here, I just want to see him. I don't know, obviously, him well enough to go which coaching staff is he more aligned with. But you should be able to give up 3 firsts for him and feel good about it. I mean, not that the Trevor Lawrence thing would ever even happen, but if you were the Jags and you could say, like, hey, we'll give you Trevor Lawrence for Deshaun, you do it in a second because of his age and the fact that we've already seen him do it. So 3 first-rounders for some of these quarterbacks that we've never even seen play in the game. Like, we've never actually seen them do it on Sundays, and teams are moving 3 first-rounders for these guys. I'd do that in a second for a guy like Deshaun. Throw in the running back. It doesn't matter. I just want him to go somewhere where he's happy with the coaching staff because it's never happened for him, really, I think, with the Houston Texans.
All right, the Ryan Russillo podcast. We got to get together soon. As you well know, I'm leaving your neighborhood. So I only got like 6. I know. It's not going to be the same without me. I'm not to be humble.
Did you tell Vince Vaughn yet?
I haven't seen Vince lately. I've been spending time in hospitals, so, I haven't had time to talk to Vince Vaughn. All right, buddy, good seeing you.
I'll tell him.
All right. Hey, Ryan Russillo, The Ringer. Good podcast. By the way, the Carolina situation is really interesting, and I buy it, and there's a little smoke this morning, according to legitimate people inside that organization, and I'll tell you why it makes a ton of sense. Plus, LeBron, could he play in the NFL? LeBron says so. Thoughts on that next. Any credit card can offer cash back, okay? But only Discover matches all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year. The Discover card is accepted in 99% of places where credit cards are accepted. Okay? Cash back match. Only offered by the Discover card. Learn more. Go to their site, discover.com/match. Discover. Always something brighter.